Welcome to the RedState Weekly Briefing. I am your host, Aaron Gardner. We're running a little bit late tonight. Had a couple issues getting everything together and ready to go today. So I just want to welcome everybody here. It's Sunday night. We got some breaking news going on, so I'm going to jump straight to that, and I'm going to bring Joe into this conversation because he's been actually following this news more than anybody else on the panel right now. So I want to kick it over to Joe for just a minute and let him expound on this breaking possible terrorist situation, possible hostage situation in Sydney, Australia. So Joe, let me go ahead and go to you real quick.
Okay, there are I think the last count was like 13 hostages being held inside of a cafe in Sydney, Australia. The building that this is in is connected to an office building, and it's right across the street from a news station in Sydney. So they're getting all eyes on this. In fact, the newsroom was evacuated, but they've still got cameras trained at this place. What we know is that there are cops on the outside with guns aimed at the building. There are hostages that we've seen, and what appears to be an Islamic flag being held. In fact, I saw a translation that was retweeted into my timeline, I think by Jake Tapper. According to one person, the flag reads, "There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of God." So even though news networks are right now calling it a possible Islamic situation, I think we can almost safely assume that it has some sort of Islamic ties.
So what you're saying here is tomorrow in the Rose Garden, we should absolutely not expect Obama to come out and call this a terrorist incident, because obvious terrorist incidents are things that he has to wait a few days to understand, and maybe even a few months to understand. So I just want to point that out off the bat. But joking aside, Joe, this is a interesting thing to have happened after we had the Tortu report put out this week, and honestly, after we've seen failure upon failure from the Obama administration fighting the war on terror. So it really is interesting that this has come out just a week after the terror report, especially. What do you think about that?
I'm not going to jump in and say that the two incidents are related, but I think it is very, very likely that the two incidents are related. This torture report, which we know was just political theater to keep people from paying attention to Jonathan Gruber, which in turn was political theater to keep people from paying attention to the Cromnibus bull crap that was going on. One big, it's like Inception, but with political kabuki theater, I guess you could call it, is how this week has turned out. But we have, again, this Islamist appearing situation happening in Sydney, Australia right now. Pretty much well chosen in terms of being right across the street from a TV station where they have cameras trained on it, and a lot of eyes on it right now. A lot of news organizations are just now picking up on it. CNN's got stuff on it. Even BuzzFeed News has something up on it right now. So it's a situation. I'll keep looking at it, and if anything else comes up during the show, I'll be sure to mention it.
Now, just in general, LaDuke, I'm going to come over to you here in a minute. We all have a friend who wrote about torture the day after this torture report came out, and I actually want to make sure and share his post with everybody. Our friend Caleb Howe at not at RedState, actually, writing at rabblewriter, holy cow, .com. It was, well, he wrote a very good post. I can't find the link right now, and that's what I was stalling there for, but I can't find the link right now. But if you go to rabblewriter.com, you could read his post about torture, and it was an excellent rebuke to the crybabies who have been out and about on the left, crying about things like rectal rectal feeding and things like that. And just an interesting note, if you look up rectal feeding on Google, you probably, if you manage to get by any nasty websites, there's actually a Wikipedia article that tells you what it really is, and it's called a nutrient enema, and it actually, after one of our presidents, James Garfield, was shot, it was credited with having extended his life afterwards. So, just a little trivia note in history there for you. But, LaDuke, I want to come back over to you. As far as I know you're hurting from that. As far as this sort of stuff goes, I mean, as much theater as that report was, we knew that this sort of reaction would come from this. We didn't know when, we didn't know how, but we knew there'd be a reaction from Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Islamics, jihadists, whoever they are. We knew there'd be a response. So this isn't really surprising, but what do you think is going to come of it? Do you think, again, we're going to just yell never forget and then go back to sleep and forget again?
I don't know. I mean, it's a fair enough question. I didn't actually, normally I dive into these reports and read at least a little bit of it. I didn't read this one because right off the bat it sounded like, Dianne Feinstein didn't have enough fiber in her diet, and she's going out as the chairman of that committee, and she's a little bit upset, so she basically was like, nah, and it sounded like it was kind of one-sided. I did see a meme that I thought was pretty interesting, and it was sad to revisit it, but it had focused pictures of those people who were on the 70th, 80th floor of the World Trade Center, and that they were sitting out on a ledge or jumping, and underneath it said hashtag I can't breathe. And if you look at it with that basis, that yeah, you had some people that they were given some discomfort, I get that, but you had 3,000 Americans that lost their lives and died in one of the most horrific ways live on TV. Waterboarding. You know what? And a free ticket down to Guantanamo with 3 square meals a day and beautiful weather, and Fidel Castro ordering you from afar. It sounds like probably something that 80% of Occupy would love to do in this country.
Well, I've gone ahead. I found the link, and I'm adding it to the Showcase app right now from rabblewriter.com by Caleb Howe. And you can go to the event page for this Google Hangout by visiting redstate.com and checking out the site there and checking out the feed there. We got all the links there. But in the Showcase app, the name of the post is actually, that Caleb wrote, is We Should Be Torturing More, Not Less. And it's Caleb's defense, and I want to point out here, Caleb is a Marine Corps, well, he's a Marine. He's a veteran, and he has a unique perspective on a lot of things in life, and I think this is one of those. But, I mean, he puts out a really good post on why we need to really take what was put out with a grain of salt and understand who the real enemies are in life. And it's not those who are out there trying to defend us. Well, it's not the CIA operatives. It's not the heads of the black sites. It's not the special forces or Delta or special operation operatives who are out there in the heat of battle and kill somebody who may have their hands up and is saying don't shoot. It's those people who are flying planes into buildings. Those people who are trying to exterminate Israel from the existence of history and the future. Those are the people we should be worrying about, not whether or not somebody received all their nutritional needs through a tube that went into their butt.
Feeding tube in the butt. I knew we were going to get to that subject one day in the RedState Weekly Briefing. The people who are actually bringing up, at least they're being intellectually consistent, that don't like torture. And they also don't like it that there are people in Afghanistan holding up signs saying "Don't shoot" when a drone strike hits, because of course President Obama loves the drone strike. So with and if you've got to kill a terrorist in the field, in country, fine, you got to do it. But I think that the argument has been made, and I think effectively, that this administration has fallen in love with the idea of just firing some drones or taking some drones and firing missiles into areas and not actually catching enemy combatants to get intelligence out of them. And we're falling behind a little bit, according to some people, because of that, including the former Vice President of these United States, Dick Cheney. So the people who are consistent about it and say, I don't like torture and I don't think we should be droning people, at least they're being intellectually consistent, as opposed to the people in this administration saying, you guys were bad for waterboarding, but damn it, we're going to fire a couple Hellfire missiles from 30 miles away into a group of people. And as some innocents get killed, it's like, it's all right. It's a happy day still.
Well, I'm going to go to Sarah next, and I got to agree with you. The drone thing, it is quite cowardly. And Sarah, I want to prop one more question to you before I come to you. There's another difference here that it'd be a failure if I didn't mention this. Australia has very, very strict gun control laws. Now, honestly, that makes them what's called a soft target. And it isn't surprising to me that a terrorist organization would hit a soft target that has something like the gun control laws that are in Australia. So I want to lay that out. You think that makes a difference in the decision-making process of the terrorist groups?
Well, certainly it makes a difference. I don't necessarily want to draw a direct correlation between the two, because I think one of the things that we get in trouble for is politicizing everything. And although it is very clearly an issue, the terrorists tend to attack, whether you're talking about Fort Hood or you're talking about this situation. They target planes, they target places where people are not allowed to have guns. They know what gun-free zones are. They know where they can hit, and they won't have to worry about getting fired upon. But real quick, have you seen the picture out yet of all of the hostages lined up against the windows with their hands up on the window?
No, I have not.
Because to me, that's the creepiest thing that's going on right now. They've got all of, about 10 of the hostages, I don't know how many are in there, lined up against the front windows of the store with their hands up against the windows, as if they are just getting ready to do a mass execution on display, like you're in a shopping center. It's very unsettling.
At any moment, the Occupy groups that have taken over the Ferguson and all that protest, the Garner protest, they'll find that image and they will attach the hashtags hands up, don't shoot. That's how things work nowadays, and that's what's unfortunate. And that's what we're against when we say let's not politicize everything.
Exactly.
No, I'm going to disagree with both of you, because what they're going to do is they're going to take the side of whoever's doing this and saying they're misunderstood.
We have to have empathy for these people.
These
people understand where they're coming from.
These people didn't have an effective school lunch program. That's why they're taking hostages now.
That has to be it. It has to be the fact that they don't have an effective school lunch program.
If we only were feeding them adequate food and not the junk that Joe Cunningham ate for all of his life, and look at the shape he's in, these people would have been happy, self-adjusted. They'd be out there right now in the bush in Australia having fun instead of taking hostages. What is the matter with Australia and the world for not giving hot school lunches for free?
It's a question that we'll have to ponder on greatly. Before we move on to our next subject, though, I want to get one last update from Joe while we're on this subject. Just let us know what the latest is. I saw some reports of airspace being restricted in Sydney, so let me know what you got on that. And then we are going to go ahead and go into our next subject of the Cromney-Bus debate. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Joe, and speak up.
Sorry about that. It looks like the Prime Minister has actually said that the airspace has not been closed down. They have helicopters in the sky redirecting any air traffic. The airspace has not been closed. And again, there's I think they said 13 potential hostages and more than one gunman. I think I had seen. So that's kind of the situation there again. Police have surrounded or have, I believe, are covering the 3 entrances to the cafe. So, you know, I'll keep looking at it, see if there's anything new that's coming up.
Okay, and also while you're looking at that, do one other thing. I see a couple breaking things about a story that we're going to be talking about later on the Twitter right now as well. One coming out from the AP that I'd like you to track, and also one from a less reputable news source that you know that I'm talking about, but I think you need to check it out.
Politico?
No, it wasn't Politico. Although
Please tell me
could
it's
be one of
Fox.
the options.
Don't make me do it.
It's not Fox either. I'm going to let it remain unnamed until Joe finds it and reads it.
The source who shall not be named.
Maybe we'll have Joe just do something wild and crazy on air after he reads this, like that is incredibly shocking. But let's go with the Cromnibus debate. And
I see the AP breaking story.
Yes, the AP breaking story we'll talk about here in a few minutes. I want to give everybody time to look at it where we're discussing this subject as well. Cromnibus. LaDuke, I want to come to you first on this Cromnibus bill. Now, you have to take partial responsibility for this happening. You know that, right?
I know.
Explain to the people why the Cromnibus is all your fault.
Well, Aaron, because I'm the voice of the people. And as the voice of the people, when things go wrong, I have to take responsibility. I absolutely have no idea why this would be my fault. I do know.
Was there a certain deciding vote from a guy in the House?
Oh, yeah, Kerry Bentivoglio. God love Kerry. Fabulous individual. I mean, he was a one-termer. He won when Thad Cochran, of course, goofed up and couldn't get 1,000 valid signatures. Actually had his people, he didn't know about it, but
you said Thad Cochran.
Not Thad.
Thad McCotter.
Yeah. Both.
Thad.
Yeah, both Thad, and they both have cock in their name. So Thad McCotter couldn't get 1,000 valid signatures, and that fell apart. And so Kerry kind of was in the primary and won, and he lost, and he was a Tea Party darling. And I, railed on some people. I railed on some organizations because I was like, do you know that this man thinks he's Santa Claus? He said that in a federal court case. He called up a National Air Guard base here in Mount Clemens, Selfridge Air National Guard Base, and asked on December 24th if he had permission to fly his sleigh and reindeer over their airspace. This man is nuts, okay? He's Caleb Howe on steroids. Why was this guy elected? And quote unquote Tea Party. So yeah, he cast a nay vote, and then they twisted his arm. He went out and had a couple cigarettes with Speaker Boehner, and he voted yay.
This is what I would get. Out of all the insanity that this guy has, he's like, oh, Cromnibus, yeah, that's reasonable. I'll vote for that. Really? You're not willing to stand up, but you're willing to stand up to fly your sleigh and reindeer over certain restricted airspaces and go to court over that?
I'm sorry.
You can't vote against the Cromnibus?
Listen, the United States military is the best military in the world, but they don't have a jet that can keep up with Santa and his reindeer. Okay? You don't need permission to fly over the airspace because it's going to be in a blink of an eye that you're over it. I mean, come on. He was being courteous, of course, just giving him a call and giving him a heads up, but still. I mean, that's just ridiculous if you think about it on the face of it. But evidently, Aaron, you're a former smoker. I think Sarah, I can't remember if you do or not. When people share cigarettes, beautiful things happen.
It's true.
And evidently, going out and sharing a smoke with the Speaker of the House, you flip your vote from nay to yay.
Well, maybe they're smoking one of those reefer cigarettes.
Nope, that's absolutely not right. We're not going to start that rumor here on the Red State Weekly Briefing, young man.
Well, you know,
I mean, it would make
we know
sense.
Boehner likes red wine, so I'm not going to discuss that. But back to the Cromney bus. Now, there was a big debate about the Cromney bus, whether or not it was good or it was bad. We had Senator Warren coming out against some of the corpus cronius and things and repeals of Dodd-Frank. She was taking her populist pitch out there. We had Senator Ted Cruz coming out saying, hey, this is a fight. We need to fight. We need to stop this. And we need to make sure that we have these guys on record for amnesty going into the new session with the new Congress. And I know, LaDuke, you scuffled on Twitter with some of the establishment guys this week, and really you tried to you tried to stand up for the defense of Cruz and just the reality of the situation. Why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about what happened on Twitter?
Okay, so and I'm not joking about this. I used to be a C-SPAN junkie. You know, I used to watch C-SPAN all the time. Dated a girl, she got me out of it because she was like, "You're boring. You're not fun." And it was all true, but I liked being informed about what was going on the floor of the House and the Senate. And so Friday night, I just happened to flip and see that they were in session, and they're trying to get this bill passed. And I see Senator Cruz, the junior senator from Texas, go down and talk, and so I turned it up. And Senator Cruz gave about a 20-25 minute, very, I thought, well laid out speech. And at the end, he raised a constitutional point of order on this bill and the funding mechanism which funds the president's executive order. Now, I'd never heard anybody say a constitutional point of order. And you could tell before they muted the mic, everybody in the chamber was like, what WTF, what just happened? And Harry Reid crawled out from underneath his rock, and he was furious. Because he was told that basically what was going to happen was they were going to get a clean vote on this, and then they had the weekend off, and they would go back at it next week. And because Senator Lee and Senator Cruz stood up and said, you know what, no, we want to vote on this part. We want to see if the Senate actually thinks this is constitutional. And what they wanted to do was get the senators who basically campaigned on the fact that they were not going to stand for the executive order if the president went that route, because, of course, he did it after the election. Speaker Boehner said that if the president did this, he would be poisoning the well. He said that 2 days after the election. Well, they went and funded this, and they didn't need to. They could have passed a clean CR for 3 months and let the new Congress handle this.
And that's exactly what they should have done. That's what the responsible thing for both sides would have done. That's the respectful thing for them to do after a November election.
Okay, in that regard, yeah. The responsible thing, actually, Aaron, would be that they would have had this done before the fiscal year began October 1st. But what happens is that they continuously do this at the last minute. You had a couple of guys in the House, and I can't remember who, that went down to the floor of the House before they passed the rule and said, why are you dropping this 1,700-page bill on us 2 days before? And I had said, well, you know, they passed 5 out of 7 of these and everything and such. Well, they did amendments, right? They did add-ons. And, you know, and I had people that, you know, are, you know, work on the Hill basically say, well, yeah, that's true. You can't do this to people if they're actually going to be responsible and their staffs and themselves are going to go through this. And what they then tried to do is, of course, they tried to make Senator Cruz the boogeyman again and say, well, oh, look, oh, my God, he blew this up, and now Harry Reid's going to get all these nominations through, which he was going to do anyway. Ladies and gentlemen, on my side of the aisle that think that business as usual, status quo is acceptable. It is unacceptable. Harry Reid did the nuke option on you, and he laughed the whole time because he knew that the leadership in the GOP would do nothing. They would do zilch. And if you want to know what they could have done, you know when they go to read a bill and they say, can we act as though it's just been read without objection because it technically has to be read? Mitch McConnell should have said, we're going to make sure every damn bill that comes before this floor is going to be read if you go ahead and do that. And you know what would have passed out of there? Zero. Nothing. But they didn't want to do that. They took the punch and they rolled. And now they're going to try to blame Senator Cruz and Senator Lee for raising the point of, hey, everybody that said that they're against the president doing this executive order instead of waiting for the courts to act, we have the power to strip this out and defund it. And they didn't do it. Because you know why? In that, let me finish. That Politico piece, we had senators that were going out to movies and they had to turn around and go back. They were going to have the weekend off. And my God, Senator Cruz and Senator Lee are raising this point. I'm going out to dinner. And how dare they take up my dinner time? I was on a plane to go, shut up. My God. When I hear people say that Cruz and Lee are whining, people, look in the mirror, take a deep breath, and go, it's really me.
Yeah. Well, check it out. Eric actually put up a post that said, the GOP decided this week to stand with Wall Street and on Main Street. And it's insane that this is what's happening when you consider just this last week we had a poll that came out that showed 66% of Americans believe that the United States is on the wrong track. 58% of Americans disapprove of the job that Obama is doing. And the GOP establishment, not just the GOP leadership and establishment, but the GOP leadership, the GOP establishment, the down-the-line GOP Republican all came together to stand against moving forward in reform and instead cling to the status quo. It's absolutely ridiculous to me that this has happened this way. And honestly, for me, Mike Lee, Ted Cruz, even Jeff Sessions, I'll say, in this instance, they stand for everything that the Republican Party should stand for. They're standing against big government. They're standing against big business. They're standing against big bills. We're not for the cronyism. We're not for the 2,000-page bills that can't be read. We were told that that was awful. We were told by John Boehner that was awful. And now, just weeks after the election, we've secured these new majorities, and their only thought is to continue the status quo just so they can. And the reason why is 2016. They're already thinking about how they're going to lose 2016.
Yeah, the meme's already been written and read.
Can I interject something just really quick about Sydney because I just watched it on the TV?
Yes, please.
CNN is blurring out the flag.
Yeah, I just saw
Are
that.
you kidding me?
No.
They are blurring out the flag, yes.
Well, it's free publicity. I mean, that's a fundraising drive. You don't want to do that.
Oh my God.
It's true.
It's like, there's Russia Today. It's like Pravda. CNN is like Pravda doing that. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you know what? I bet you CNN, just to make this point, I bet you CNN, with the protests and rioters and the marchers who were marching around with their little signs that actually say Communist Party USA on the bottom, I bet you they blurred that out too.
Pravda would never hire Don Lemon. I mean, that's just not true. But to go back, the people who are upset and saying that strategy-wise, if you read and believe the Politico pieces, which I generally don't believe Politico, because if you really dissect this stuff, it's always kind of like, the insiders know conservatives and Republicans are stupid. They say Reid was going to do this anyway. He was going to get all this.
And he had time. Nothing Ted Cruz did caused this to happen. But right now we have this division where you either think Ted Cruz is Groot and he's about to screw everybody up for us, like in a good way, or he's Jar Jar Binks. That the establishment hacks and the reasonable conservatives, they see him as Jar Jar Binks, and those people who are conservatives who want action after years and years of complacency and lies and false promises from the GOP, they look at him as Groot. They're throwing him into a fight and hoping that he just jacks stuff up.
He's doing what he believes is right. And I remember when Senator Paul went down to the floor and talked about the drone program and everything, the NSA program. Harry Reid actually went out there and was like, I'm glad somebody stood up and did a filibuster finally on this. I give him credit. I don't agree with it, but the vogue thing right now is to pile on. And the people who are piling on, and I have a lot of respect for some of the individuals I went back and forth with, but evidently you don't know about the parliamentary procedures in the very body you're discussing about what the senator was doing and about what Harry Reid was going to do. Harry Reid kept that body in session until December 24th to get Obamacare passed. I mean, you remember that? And in the Politico piece, this was all premised on the fact the strategy was Reid was going to say, you know what, let's just get out of here because everybody wants to go home for Christmas. That strategy? Have you not watched what Harry Reid's done for the past 6 years? He makes you pound sand, and he giggles at it. Okay?
And the other thing is, we know now, from multiple sources saying this, that Mitch McConnell knew that Harry Reid was going to bring all these confirmations on Monday anyhow, and never told the freaking conference.
Yeah. No, Harry Reid and Mitch McConnell have it. They may not like each other, but they have a good working relationship in terms of they communicate. So yeah, Reid let him know because he had to because McConnell would have to let the other senators know. It's like, look, you may be called back at any other point, and they knew that. These nominations were going to go through.
Apparently, the word is McConnell didn't share it with the conference, and they didn't.
Well,
know
then
that.
I mean, that's on him. But I have no doubt that they knew, because the majority leader did not tell them this is our drop dead date. And why didn't he say there was a drop dead date? Because he was going to get what he wanted through. I mean, guys, you've watched a lot of these people. Now, I understand some of the 30 unders. I know it's all new to you because you think it just started happening when you got involved. But if you go back to 2001 to 2006 and see what the leadership did at the time, in both in the House and the Senate, you'll see that this is what we call rinse, repeat, spin, spit again. It's the same damn thing. So
spin or spit?
I would hope, whatever. I've been drinking hot tea and bourbon, Sarah. So
Duke.
I'm going to shut up. I've taken up too much time here. You too? Oh,
we're drinking the same.
I've taken up too much time.
Well,
so
let's go ahead.
I don't apologize. I was going to say I apologize for taking up so much time, but I did go at a lot of people over the past 36 hours on Twitter and communicate with them, and I don't understand why the status quo position, which has not worked in this country for 20 years now, is somehow the fallback position and everything's going to get better. I'm befuddled by it.
Well, the default is surrender right now with the GOP caucus for some reason, and outside of a few highlights such as Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, and hopefully Ken Buck when he gets into the House in this next session, hopefully we'll be able to see some things start happening. But let's go ahead and end it there on whether or not Ted Cruz is a white knight or a fumbling fool. And, well, let me say one more thing. To those people out there who think that they, as a pundit, have a better grasp of how the Senate works than Mike Lee, you should really check your ego. I understand that you get paid to parrot certain talking points, but you really need to calm yourself down there. All right? You probably don't watch the show anyhow. You're bigger than that. But you just think about that out there.
Or just, you know what? Just talk to somebody in the Senate, okay, that doesn't have an axe to grind. Somebody close to the Senate parliamentarian.
Right. Exactly. It's not that difficult.
Because they'll tell you, they will tell you exactly, without an axe to grind, because there are people that with axes, but they'll tell you exactly how it is. And you can think whatever you want about Senator Cruz, Senator Lee, Senator Sessions. They have egos, whatever and such. Most politicians do. That's a non sequitur. actually that's a fallback idiotic position to even bring that up and say, oh, they've got an ego. Yeah, okay, if you put yourself up to election before your peers, I think most people would have to have somewhat of a healthy ego. But you know what? The man is standing on what he believes is principle. I also happen to believe in that same principle. And how dare you try to demean and mock that by saying that an individual who is standing on principle, trying to improve this country in the only way that he knows how, is a member of the greatest deliberative body that the Lord in heaven above has ever made, and you're going to take cheap shots at him because of that? Well, principle always wins out the day eventually, not this posturing that you people are doing, because it's business as usual, and I'm out. I'm done.
There he is. The people's voice is spoken, and you can either accept that or reject that you are a person, I guess. Now, we're going to move on. We're going to move on to our last segment. We got started a little late today, and we're not going to finish too late, but I want to talk a little bit about this UVA rape hoax, and then, well, the possibility that this UVA rape allegations are actually a hoax. Let me say it that way, lawyers. But let me just go into this real quick here. If you've been living under a rock, the Rolling Stone had an article written by Sabrina Erdely, who claimed that in the article it was claimed that a girl at UVA named Jackie went on a date with a guy named Drew. After the date, he took her to his fraternity and brought her upstairs and led a gang rape of 5 to 7 people. That was the original story. Totally not true. Fabulous, but totally not true. What really happened was that there was a date and she was taken up, and then 5 guys made her perform oral sex. Oh wait, no, that wasn't true either. That was the fallback story that wasn't true, but that wasn't true either. What appears to actually be the case is that Jackie created a fake person with a real phone number and a real person's picture, and created this entire fantasy world in which he attended UVA, and he was a third-year student while she was a freshman. And he had such a crush on her that he was like reaching out to her friend, this guy named Ryan, and basically saying, oh, I don't understand why she's so hung up on you, this first-year chemistry dork, or whatever. So she basically is like this weird self-catfishing stalker menage a trois that's going on in this girl's mind. And we don't know that any sexual assault of any kind happened to her at any time. So we've seen this media narrative fall apart. We've seen the rad femmes pulling their hair out of their armpits. We've seen various news people deleting series of tweets where they had praised the reporting of Rolling Stone. We've seen a mess. So let me go over to Joe first on this issue. What do you think about this mad story? And I know there's some breaking news from the AP on this story as well. So let's go to you first, Joe. Tell me what the heck's going on here.
Well, as of right now, the writer of the original 5,000-word story about a rape that didn't happen is now going out and contacting the 3 friends that she said she had talked to and actually made up stuff about. Like, these kids who are now on the record with the AP and having given their full names. Their full names are now out in the public. They're all saying, she never contacted us. We urged we urge Jackie to call the cops. Just despite what the story said, and they're saying that now the writer is calling them and talking to them, which, as Sonny Bunch of the Washington Free Beacon just pointed out on Twitter, he said, if I were the Rolling Stone, I would be really cautious about this writer going and doing this now, because
this writer, if I were the Rolling Stone, I would fire. I would not allow her to freelance for us anymore. I would not contract her for any stories. I would definitely make sure that she didn't touch this story with a 10-foot pole. And instead, I would have one of our staff writers, along with one of our senior editors, take over this story from her, take all of her notes, all of her contacts, which apparently is just Jackie, in all honesty, and start from scratch.
The Rolling Stone should, in a just world, something like that would happen. But in a world where the current state of journalism exists, you're not going to get that. At best, you're going to get one more apology from the Rolling Stone. They're going to forget that this ever happened. I'm personally wondering again, what happened to the good old days when all they were doing were posting, glamour shots of Boston bombers, and now we get this sad state of affairs from the Rolling Stone. But even worse than that are still the Amanda Marcottes and the folks of the world who are still saying that despite this probably not being a true story, we should still take the story to heart because of what it stands for.
Yeah, that's the most disgusting thing to me. Look, we should all be really worried about this story that didn't happen just because it seems like something that could, and it would be really, really bad. But ignore the things that actually happen in life. Ignore the guys who are getting falsely charged on college campuses with rape, and who are then having their lives destroyed, getting kicked out of colleges, and having no due process given to them. Maybe we should worry about them. Maybe we should worry about this guy, Ryan, who was apparently stalked by Jackie, and really, in my view, is the only victim in this story, other than, the American public for having to read it and deal with the lies that have been put out by people like Rolling Stone and the Rad Femmes.
Absolutely, and what really gets me here is Glenn Reynolds' Instapund was absolutely right when he said that in today's culture, with this story and everything that's happened, Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird would be considered the bad guy here for defending somebody who was accused of rape. Imagine a world where Atticus Finch, was defending Male Yule in this case. Now, Scout, we need to remember just because this could be a blatant case of racism, we need to still trust that Male Yule may not be lying. And even if she is, we need to remember that all women are 1,000% more susceptible to rape when there is a man around. So you need to work as hard as you can to make sure that stories like this get out there, whether or not they are truthful. You're welcome.
That was amazing. Sarah, now, let me ask you, you're a woman, okay? You're a woman who has to defend yourself. Now, this story has made it harder for you.
I'm also very, very familiar
woman.
with UVA as a campus.
What was that?
I'm also very familiar with UVA as a campus.
Well, tell me, how frustrating is this for you when you see false allegations that come out, when you know that there are real issues that need to be addressed?
Well, that's the most frustrating part from both angles, both after the fact, where anyone who calls for the actual investigation of claims like this is all of a sudden a rape apologist, because we want the information to be looked into before it's published in a multi-million reader subscribed publication. Thank you, Rolling Stone. And just the wanting of the other, just wanting, what's her name, Sabrina Erdely? Is that how you say her last name?
Erdely, yes.
Just by wanting her to go follow up on her sources and actually do a tiny, tiny bit of actual journalism all of a sudden paints anyone who wants that as a rape apologist. And I think that's a really, really, really dangerous thing to do, because if you are accusing people who want reality and fact to be the basis of journalism of being rape apologists, then you're really just, not only are you making it very difficult for people who are actual victims of rape to come forward, even more so than anyone who claims that all women are liars, which I don't know anyone who actually does that. But if that's your premise, if your premise is that you are accusing someone of thinking that women just lie all the time and that there's never any rape,
anybody who
and it's,
isn't a Democrat staffer who says that.
Thank you. Exactly. Exactly. So all of a sudden you have the situation where a Democratic staffer can be convicted of actual multiple rapes, and this is something that actually happened, completely ignored, brushed under the rug, and they're going to put all of their energy and focus on this story. You know what? I have no doubt that something happened to Jackie. I really don't. I am perfectly willing to believe that she had some sort of incident where something happened where she felt assaulted. I believe that. I have no problem believing that. My problem is that Sabrina went shopping for this story, and Sabrina went out and sought somebody who had a story about a sexual assault and went to her, heard her story, and published it. And there was nothing beyond that. So this girl's story, that from what we can tell at this point seems to be a bit of a snowballed fabrication, that maybe something happened and she sort of kept telling the story and having to make it sound worse than it was.
From what it appears now, we know that no rape happened on that night.
Correct. We know that there was absolutely no rape, but that doesn't mean there wasn't an assault of some sort.
Yeah, there may have been some moment earlier in her life where an incident occurred, or maybe it wasn't even a physical assault or anything. It could just be something that is emotionally unstable in her. It could just be.
I'm waiting for Sabrina to apologize to Jackie.
Maybe her parents got divorced and it really affected her in some way. There's all sorts of things that could be explanations for why her behavior was what it was.
My point being is that Jackie is a victim. Jackie is a victim.
Legitimate explanations that would make me have more compassion on her and not want her maybe to be looked at for the wrong things that she did do. I mean, I think it's clear that the behaviors she had towards Ryan were borderline on being a stalker, honestly.
Sure, but maybe, and that may be the case, and that's something that Miss Sabrina Erdely probably should have looked into with a little bit of journalism and a little bit of integrity and looked into the story. The person who is a victim here is Jackie, and Jackie has been a victim of Sabrina's agenda. And Sabrina went after this girl, found this girl who clearly isn't the most stable of people, and she obviously has some issues, and she obviously has some things going on, and she went ahead and published her story in the Rolling Stone magazine. Sabrina needs to apologize to Jackie for what she did to Jackie.
I think you're right about that, but
Jackie didn't seek out Sabrina.
I'm no longer comfortable referring to Jackie as a victim. I was comfortable referring to her as a victim for the first month of this story.
No, she is a victim of Sabrina's agenda. There is no doubt about that. I'm not saying that she's a victim of any assault. I am telling you that she is a victim of Sabrina's agenda.
I'll say this. She's a victim of her own agenda as well then, because she has been an activist within this agenda for a while. Jackie has. I mean, that's just the reality.
She's trained.
Her social media is out there. You can see it.
She's a female. She is trained
to be there. I understand that.
And don't forget, she was led to the writer through another activist on campus. So
the writer was led to her through an activist on campus.
Well,
it was the other way around. But
the activist on campus acted as a conduit for both
Correct.
Jackie and Sabrina Erdely. So, I mean, what can you really say? At this point, I don't think you can draw conclusions with any accuracy. I doubt that she was physically assaulted in any way that conforms to either of the stories that she's told thus far.
There is no evidence to that. There's no evidence that to points that she had any sort of physical assault at all. There's no reason. There's no evidence of it. And if Sabrina had done a little bit of her job, she would have found that, and the story wouldn't have been published.
Yeah, I think that's true too. But you know, the story would have been published somehow, some way, in some form, because if it wasn't her to leak, it would have been some other reporter with an agenda who's out there shuffling. Yeah. Because I'll let you know, she's not the exception to the rule. She's the rule. That's how it is these days. The exception to the rule are those guys over at the Washington Post who did their job after social media flared up and made the mainstream media, the print media, look at these things.
Can we give Washington Post a little bit?
A lot of people who did that.
Yay, Washington Post!
Yes, absolutely.
Finally, Washington Post is stepping up a little bit. That is a good thing that came out of all this. The Washington Post has improved its credibility just ever so slightly.
Just ever so slightly. So we are just a few more minutes left in the show, and I want to talk about one more thing because it's very, very important. Now, we talked about a little bit of corruption just a minute ago with the Democrat staffer who raped 3 women, used Ambien to do it, and ended up getting a suspended sentence. Now, Sarah, you've been working on a project that also touches on some corruption, Democratic corruption, and machine corruption in government in Mr. LaDuke's city of birth. So let me go to you, Sarah, and why don't you talk to us a little bit about the follow-up to Bankrupt, the Detroit Project movie. You can see the details at DetroitProjectMovie.com.
Yes, sir. We're actually doing a crowdsourcing campaign for this one. So we're trying to raise some money to get our I'm just watching a car run into a gas tank on CNN. Yay. We're trying to raise some funds so that we can do the expansion of Bankrupt, which most of you, your listeners, are probably familiar with. We did a 40-minute web doc this past January about the Detroit bankruptcy and the cronyism and corruption that led to it, and the big business, big government, big special interests, cronyism and corruption that goes on to bring down cities like Detroit, and how Detroit was once the shining beacon on the hill of American exceptionalism and is now the shining beacon of the hill of American failure. And we just have this week, this is a good week for the news, for Detroit news, as they just announced that they went out of bankruptcy. Duke, you can follow me up on this one. The Kevin Orr has stepped down as emergency manager, and they are now in the hands of the people of Detroit, or the leaders of Detroit, to continue on. So what we're looking to do right now is to tell that story. We want to hold accountable the powers that be. We want to hold accountable the people who are doling out the cash to the city. We want to go in there and talk to the city council members and talk to the police chiefs and talk to the people who are local philanthropists trying to bring up the city, and seeing what they're doing and seeing what's working and seeing if they're following the same paths that they followed before, seeing if they've learned from their mistakes. And I think we all know we can't trust the national media to do that.
Absolutely. Let me break in real quick on Kevin Orr. I just want to note, when we were there in what was it? Middle of the summer sometime, July.
Yeah, like late July.
Yeah. We were there in late July, and the name Kevin Orr, no matter which side you were on, it seemed like all of a sudden people thought you were talking about a horned beast who lived in a penthouse and ruled on high, and all the people were his servants and slaves.
Right.
So, Sarah, LaDuke, tell me, is that the Kevin Orr who got them out of bankruptcy? Is that how it's being talked about? LaDuke, we'll start with you.
Yeah, go ahead. I feel like you might have a more passionate answer about this than I do.
Yes. Kevin Orr actually did a much better job than I had anticipated, and not because of his skill set, but because of the situation that he was walking into. 50 years of corruption on the political level. The previous mayor, Kwame Kilpatrick, is now sitting in a federal prison because of money laundering, basically bankrupting the sewer system and pocketing money out of that. And you can't have an outsider come into Detroit and say they're going to fix stuff. Kevin Orr did a phenomenal job. I don't agree with some of the political solutions, but that was outside of his hands.
Right.
There were people that were upset, but I can tell you this much. When they decided to go into bankruptcy and appoint an emergency manager, I would have almost guaranteed you that there would have been mini Ferguson riots in Detroit, and it didn't happen. And one of the reasons why was because Kevin Orr made a sustained effort to reach out to the people who were opposing him and their quote-unquote leaders of groups. And they may not have agreed, but he listened to them. And Kevin Orr has left this city in much better shape than what he found it. And I want somebody to go and write one big damn check right now to get this documentary made, because Ben and Michael and Sarah did a phenomenal job with Bankrupt, and getting inside and doing a more in-depth thing about the people who are in charge now and what is going to happen with the city going forward. In the most prosperous country in the world, which by default meant it was the most prosperous city in the world. And if you don't think that what can happen to Detroit can happen to America, you probably also think Ted Cruz is some sort of Satan.
Right.
That's it?
What's happening? Yeah, I mean, what's happening in Detroit is exactly what's happening in America. You've got and the funny thing about this story is the story can be is interesting to both sides of the aisle. This isn't just a necessarily Republican story or a conservative story. This is a story about special interests and big government and cronyism working together to do things that benefit themselves and under the guise of doing it for the people that they represent.
All true.
So
and someone needs to shine a light on it. What's the best disinfectant?
Sunshine. And I wanna talk to I want to end here actually and come to a close of our show. Sarah, first and foremost, let me go to you and just tell the people where they can find you on Twitter and on the internet, and where they can find information about the Detroit Project online, please.
You can find me on Twitter at Mama Swati if you want to chat. I'm usually there. But for movie stuff, you go to DetroitProjectMovie.com. That takes you directly to our Indiegogo page. And if you're curious about any of our other work, you can go to MrSmithMedia.com. That has our reel and all of our past work, so you can get an idea of what you're putting your money behind. Oh, and by the way, all donations are tax deductible thanks to our partnership with the Moving Picture Institute. So if you're looking to get rid of some funds before the end of the year to help with your tax filing, give us a call.
Do it.
Say the address for me one more time, just so people can get that down.
DetroitProjectMovie.com.
DetroitProjectMovie.com.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Joe, go ahead and give us one last update on any news that we didn't hit during the show, and any Twitter users who had questions, comments, concerns.
I did have one person who insulted my Gregory Peck impression, but just to be fair, I worked on it for a grand total of 30 minutes. That's about it as far as news. No real change. The only thing that we can really say is that an ABC reporter is saying there or an ABC cameraman has spotted a man with a bandana inside the cafe in Sydney. That's all we really have right now. And, of course, the blurring out of the flag on CNN.
All right. And Mr. LaDuke, how are you doing this evening? And tell them people where you're at. Sorry, I got confused there. I was welcoming you. I should be saying goodbye. So, LaDuke, where can the people find you?
The people can find the people's voice Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. on Bourbon on the Rocks on the mighty FTR Radio. Of course, Monday through Thursday at 8 p.m. on the Snark Factor with Fingers Malloy, and then also anytime on Twitter. Just hit me up at Irish Duke 2, and I'm more than happy to engage you.
All right. Well, LaDuke, go ahead and put that beautiful music on, and we'll say goodbye to all of our people tonight. I am Aaron Gardner, managing editor of RedState.com. You can find me on the Twitters at Aaron_RS. You can search me on Facebook for Aaron Gardner, and I'll probably won't respond. So, that's the Red State Weekly Briefing for this week. We love you all. Make sure to go see the DetroitProjectMovie.com. It's in the links at the event page, along with Caleb Howe's RabbleWriter.com, Why We Need to Torture More. Join us next week. Don't forget, Zero of Alcohol, Tobacco, Friends, Thursday, 9 p.m.
Governor Rick Schneider for president in 2016.
You joke.
Still alive.
Joseph Cunningham.